hope you're enjoying the weather in Florida after leaving DC. I'm actually across the state in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
So a little better than Washington, right?
That's right. Yeah, I feel bad for my wife and two daughters, but we're enjoying it here.
How's the first week been? Just getting associated and just beginning to get up to speed.
It's been fantastic, Steve. I mean, really, the energy has been good, but I'd say more importantly, the focus has been on a different level. Just comparing and contrasting my first season last year to this year. And I think the continuity of everything helps. Just a lot of similar messaging and everyone's onboarding the information, whether they've been here now 2 years with me or they're in their first season.
What's the personnel? Is everyone in, or some have to go back for visa purposes, or what's the status of attendance?
It's pretty high. We have some that are, I'd say 85% of the roster right now is in full training. There's probably 10% that we're working on the visa process, and that'll be very shortly that they can have full team training. And then there's a few injuries. I say that loosely, just some stuff that guys always deal with at the beginning, and we're monitoring them.
And what is your priority in terms of the style of play and things you want to implement with the new players? Obviously, you have more of the players, your players, so to speak, in camp and on the roster this year.
Yeah, listen, I want to qualify that by saying every player that was with me last season, if they're not here, those were my players too. So when you're part of our club, you're a part of our club. I understand what you mean, by the way, and that's not to discount the question, but I don't like language around that. I mean, my players are who I'm working with right now. So I'm very excited to work with this group, and the priority, to answer your question in that regard, has been to double down on the things that we were very good at last year. So I think you saw us be very good in terms of a top team whenever we're in pressing actions. When we can go in attacking transition, we were really exciting that way. The things that we want to work on is having a little bit more control with the ball, and when that first pressing action doesn't go well, how we recover, how we get behind the ball, and ultimately how we don't allow as many goals. So that's a little bit of a summary of the things we're trying to hit during preseason.
Next, we'll go to Jason Anderson.
Hi, Troy. Good to talk to you. Thanks for speaking with us today.
Thanks, Jason.
I wanted to start, and forgive me, I think I came in maybe after Steve's first question, but starting really with Steven Birnbaum's retirement last year, some of the players that departed in the offseason, guys like Russell Canales or Pedro Santos, Matty Click, there's a lot of leadership and experience in that group that isn't present now. Who are you looking to this season to sort of take that responsibility up that maybe didn't have that role as much in 2024?
Yeah, all those guys you mentioned clearly. A couple were with the club for two long spells, and that experience is something that's always difficult to replace. But Christian Benteke was our captain and stepped up as our main captain after Steve retired last year, as Christian was a vice captain before that. So we'll look to lean on him as a leader, and he's certainly fulfilling that role at the beginning of this preseason so far, and I know he'll continue to do so. But then there's guys like that joined the team last year, like Aaron Herrera. Aaron's in his 7th, 8th season as a pro, and so now he's starting to turn towards being that guy. And our team, Jared Stroud, very much the same thing. Lucas Bartlett, Dominique Badji, all these guys have now spent multiple years within the MLS and played at a really high level, and now they're in their 2nd season with DC United. So these guys are going to have a big say in a lot of the leadership that takes place on the field and off the field and in the community.
One of the newcomers on the younger side, Kim Jun Hong. What do you expect in terms of any potential communication issues at the back? Do you think that will be an issue, or is that something that he is prepared to handle?
You'd be so impressed with how mature that this young man is. He's 21 years old. He's coming to a new country, and his onboarding of not only what we're trying to do as a club, but the speaking English it's just, I have so much respect for how quickly he's been able to start to pick up the language. And so he's in classes right now, but we also have someone that we've hired, Ji-Sung Kim is someone that we've hired as a translator, and he's joining our staff, so he's almost part of the coaching staff in that way. And so he's helping him assimilate, and he's going to translate for him when needed. But June's the type of guy that he's confident. He's going to try to put himself out there, and Ji-Sung plays an amazing part as a translator, but June's a guy that wants to try it out and be practicing as much as possible without anyone translating for him. So one more time, so much respect for a young kid to have that type of mentality.
Thinking back to last year, obviously the number of goals conceded overall, it wasn't one player's issue, it was kind of a collective one. How much emphasis are you putting into defensive countermeasures, rest defense, or is it going to be more trying to defend with the ball with an increased emphasis on possession?
It's a combination. I mean, I think you're hitting right around a lot of the talking points that we're having internally as a staff, and then what we're trying to replicate on the field. We have to take a step forward. We gave up far too many goals last year, and I think you said it really well there, Jason. It doesn't come down to an individual player all the time. Ultimately, it's my responsibility to make sure that we put ourselves in a position to, just as we know our roles and responsibilities when we don't have the ball, I think we're really comfortable. When we do have the ball, we have to have the same amount of structure and organization, and I think that will help to alleviate some of the unnecessary turnovers that happen at times in bad areas. And that's really where we got punished last year far too often. But then, those are going to happen during the course of a match and the course of the season. And then how we respond in those moments and how we try to go and get behind the ball is, one more time, I said this to Steve, but that is just as important as the with the ball side.
Appreciate it, Troy. Thanks.
Yep.
Next, we'll go to Jose Oman.
Hey, Troy, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you for spending time with us. Appreciate it. You guys was talking with your GM earlier in the offseason and kind of explained what you've been mentioning earlier, the surrendering of goals, which was one of the reasons of the change of all your goalkeepers. How has it been like coming into this offseason with a whole crew of goalkeepers, and what's being emphasized in training, on what you would like to see out of your goalkeepers this year?
Yeah, we're still really early in the process for that. June's someone that, because of his visa, now he's able to fully train and fully be integrated into the team day in, day out. So we're excited about the potential that he has. Luis Peraza is someone that has a lot of experience. This is his 6th or 7th season in the MLS. At one time, he was the number 1 for New York City in 2023, but over the course of his time in the league since 2019, he's gained a lot of valuable experience at a club that's had a lot of success. And then Jordan Farr as a profile is someone that, again, 6, 7, 8 season as a pro, and he's been in the 2nd division, but he's lifted trophies at the 2nd division level. So he's adding, again, another dimension in terms of our goalkeeper profile. All these guys, the number one priority is to obviously shot stopping, handling, controlling their box, staying connected to our back four, and organizing them, and then trying to make some improvement with how we build and when we play balls over distance, because we'll absolutely still do that with who we have in the front line, just being accurate with that.
Next, we'll go to Stephen Goff.
Troy, with Randall Leal in now and Tyrell's signed, do you think this roster is set for opening day, or do you anticipate a few more moves? I know there's some young trialists in camp. Where do you think things stand going into the next 4 or 5 weeks?
I'd say the majority, Steve, of the roster is pretty well set. We feel good about the position we're in right now, and that there's been so much work and so much restructuring of what this roster looks like compared to when Atley first came in. So there's been a lot of conversations and a lot of time put into that process, and we have it in a way that now the final decisions that we make, if a trialist decides to or performs well enough and we decide to sign them, we can stay patient with that about in regards to what our needs are. And so there's a couple really interesting prospects that are in right now. We have a couple young academy players that are in and are very interesting. And we could add one or two more before we start the season, but I think in large part, in any other signing that we make outside of the group that's with us right now, we probably will hold off until later in the summer.
Next, we'll go to Dennis Gomez.
25. Great start of the season for you, and I just wanted to touch base about some of the off-season transactions, especially about such a crucial player like Matias Pala, and just wanted to know what went behind the scenes and how tough it was to make that decision, and what would it mean for your designated player spot, since it seems like you might be still using it.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And, Clicky is someone that I was very fortunate to work with. I look at my time with him and his experience and his quality and just being able to coach a profile like that. If you would have asked me 5 years ago if I would have coached a guy like Matty Click, I don't know that I would have said that I would ever be at the level that I'd be able to achieve something like that. So I learned a lot from him. He had a big personality, and a personality that always brought energy and life to our club. So I say all that because it wasn't an easy decision. But we have a really young group of center midfielders: Boris, Matias Pala, Jackson Hopkins. These three guys in particular, along with now Jose Kajima, they're a young group, but they all have the skill set that we envision for what that position entails in relationship to our game model. And we felt like that we needed to get a little bit younger in that position and get a little bit more in our way. And that doesn't take anything away from the skill set that Clicky still has in his game. But we also wanted to create a pathway for those guys, and so we wanted to make sure that it was there for them. And now those guys have to step up. That's the next piece, and we're talking to them about that from the very beginning. They know that there's a big void to fill, and this happens at every point during a club's transition from one manager to another. But also when you're trying to rebuild a roster and restructure it in the way that you envision, these are the decisions that have to be made.
And just as a follow-up, I know we're halfway into the month of January, but some sort of like a New Year's resolution for you as a head coach, and also what are your goals for the team this year?
Resolution for me is probably unoriginal. I'm trying to get fitter right now in preseason. My fitness level, from my performance coach right now, he told me that it's down a little bit. So I'm eating right, cutting weight, and that doesn't answer your question for me as a coach. I mean, my leadership style, I'm trying to make that evolve, and that's a little bit of my resolution for my position here at DC United. I'm trying to evolve my leadership in a different way, and I'm seeing a lot of benefit to what that resolution is for our club. I've said this many times, but I'll say it one more time. We sometimes were in the way that I wanted us to be last year. This year I wanted to be all the time, and we have to be committed to our culture, our environment, our game model, and hold one another accountable. And ultimately, that's how we'll be judged on if we have success this year or not.
Thank you, Troy.
Next, we'll go back to Jason Anderson.
Troy, you mentioned Matias Pala among the midfielders. Obviously, last year, maybe out of necessity, he spent more and more time as the year went on as a defender. Do you see him going back and forth, or do you maybe see him setting up more in the midfield first now that you've brought in some extra defenders and you have a couple guys back healthy again?
Yeah, the priority is to keep him in the middle of the field because that's where he's most comfortable. The beauty of Matias Pala is he does have versatility and can play there at times, but that was out of necessity last year, and we had a very small roster. We had because of different injuries that were just ones like Steve Birnbaum and Russell Knaus being out at the time, and a couple others that just you don't always foresee that coming into a season. And this year, I think we built the roster in a way that it's a little bit bigger in size, and that's also part of that youthful idea that we have some younger guys that are, I hope, going to be available throughout the entire season.
And speaking of the back line, obviously you mentioned Kai Rowles earlier. I wanted to give maybe a big picture view on what we should expect out of him, especially given last season you spent a lot of time toggling back and forth between back four, back three. Those are very, put different demands on defenders. What can we expect out of him?
Well, he's a guy that has a ton of experience to only be 26, and our preferences, we love playing in a back four. I think for us, back four, back three, we're flexible. It's really the behavior that matters to us about every single position that we want to see on the field, and we're flexible with that for our own benefit. But then also, if we see something from the opponent that allows us to restructure, then we're going to do that. And Kai's a player that has that versatility in his game. And back to his experience, I mean, to be 26 and play in a World Cup and make it to the knockout stages versus Argentina, and then go and compete in high-level European competitions with Hearts, he's a player that has been in high-pressure situations since he's been 22 years old and probably younger than that. Really calm guy is what I've seen so far. We haven't been able to see him in full team training just yet, but that'll come. Again, just visa situation will get sorted out here shortly. But what I see in his personality is someone that fits very much in line again with our cultural values and going to make our environment better.
Earlier you mentioned a few players with standard early season minor issues that will work themselves out well before you have any games. But I'm thinking back to the end of the season, some guys like Conor Atley and Jackson Hopkins were out for quite a while. Can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, Koo and Ted Kudapetro had shoulder surgery in the offseason, so he's going to be out for probably another couple months, but he's in a good spot and just making progress towards that timeline. Conor Atley is doing great right now, and he's a big part of what we do, just his personality. And when he went down, it hurt us in a lot of different ways, but the energy that he brings in every single day, we're starting to feel that again. And he's probably, another month away from being fully fit. Jackson's making good progress. He's still dealing with a little bit of an ankle issue, but I know he's going to be fit again probably in another 4 to 6 weeks. I feel really confident about that. And outside of that, just some day-to-day stuff. I think that's where we are.
Appreciate it, Troy. Thanks.
Yeah.
Next, we'll go back to Jose Luna.
Yeah, Troy. Speaking of Adley, he said when it came to the preseason plans, it was good to stay on the East Coast because that's where you guys play. But the club was very receptive. Ownership was very receptive on you guys deciding to make those changes after last season's preseason plans. Can you kind of explain, in your perspective, what led to the decision to go to Florida and what you guys have experienced thus far in being in Florida?
I mean, the relationship component between Allie and I is something that is extremely important in all of our decision making. But then the relationship between Allie, myself, and Steve Kaplan and Jason Levian is paramount. And so we have open and honest conversations whenever we try to make an ask or a request about different things. We try to explain it in the way that makes sense for what our needs are. And they've been very receptive about this in particular with the preseason planning and knowing how it's going to start everything we do in 2025 in the fashion that we want to. And so I felt that since walking in the door at DC United with Allie, with our ownership group. And, that's all that a coach can ask for.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Diego Martinez.
Hi, Troy. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Hope you're enjoying the nice weather in Florida. Speaking a little bit about preseason, you have a great mix of different teams, even one of them being in USL. What is something that you'd like to really take out from, observing other teams making their adjustments and seeing different levels of play?
The opponents, you're exactly right. The opponents are great, and again, that was strategic, making sure not only logistically if teams are close in proximity, but the different teams that you're able to play. I mean, you get a team like Red Bull who went to the finals as the opener for us beyond our inner squad. And then you play someone like the Charleston Battery, who's always been a top side in the second division. Those are two good matches to start things off. But I think you would probably expect this. Really, the opponents are going to give us the resistance we want, but I think everyone's focused pretty much on themselves right now. So we have a lot of work to do on ourselves, and it'll be great to have an opponent that presents different challenges. And so that's the piece that I think everyone's looking for in preseason.
And yeah, internally, obviously, you're more focused on yourselves. What are some things that you guys, or you at least, want to see out of the players heading into opening day?
Yeah, I mentioned a few things already. I talked to Steve and Jason about a couple different things. I don't want to keep reiterating the same thing. One thing I probably didn't mention is what I see in the physical capacity. And again, that's not going to surprise anyone that that's a big piece of trying to get everyone fully fit. But it's really been impressive to see the demand that's been put on the guys so far, and that's only going to make us stronger for the way that we want to play. So that is going to be always in our focus as we build towards what we do, with the ball and against the ball.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Mario Amaya.
Hey Troy, thanks for taking the time to speak with us. I just want to ask, two additions that you had at the end of last season, both David Schnegg and Boris Sano, showed a little bit of what they could do on the field, but then with them now having a full preseason under their belt, what are some of the expectations for them going into this season?
This one of the first conversations that I had in their individual meetings was compare and contrast your experience last year versus this year, and for those two guys, it's really easy. Just being here at the beginning and being able to start the process with everyone else makes you feel so much more a part of it. And so as a result, then you feel more confident in what you're able to go and fulfill in your individual role for the team. So those guys are both going to play a big part, I think, in what we do. You got to see David Schnegg and his ability before he got injured. I mean, he was making a very serious impact in a small window of time of 4 or 5 matches. And I think Boris Eno is someone that he showed glimpses, but it's hard to come in mid-year, and I'm not seeing glimpses in preseason right now from him. I'm seeing it every single day, and that speaks back to the point of he's starting with us, and so now he knows what the expectation is.
And then finally, the second question: what's the importance of getting Conor Atley back into onto the team after his season-ending injury from last season?
Getting him around the team, so him just being here right now, he kind of has an individual small group protocol before he returned to full team training, but it lifts the group. I mean, he's a guy that has worked really hard in his career to be able to make it to this level, and was going in the right direction last season, and it took a little bit of a stall just because of an injury that no one expected to happen. And so he's in a good position right now, and I'm really happy that he's with us, and hopefully he'll keep trending towards being fully fit here in the next month.
And that's it from Zoom, Troy. I'll
Okay.
go back there.
I just have one question. With such a large group of new players, and I understand I get the luxury of kind of taking a peek behind the curtain, but what are you and your coaching staff doing here to help instill your philosophies into these new guys, while also kind of expediting them building relationships with the rest of their teammates?
Yeah, I mean, I know why you're asking that. That's a calculated question from the inside scoop here, guys. But you see how intentional we are towards building that connective tissue that I think brings teams together in a faster way. We want to get to know these guys as humans first before we know them as players, and not just the players. I have to say, staff too. There's many new staff members, and it's important for our players to hear different stories about our coaching staff and our support staff. And that type of cohesion, it doesn't just happen overnight, but it does happen more quickly when you get to know a little bit more about someone's family or, you know, someone's difficulties in their lives. So we've spent a lot of time, and I imagine that's where that question derives from, to start to build that word culture and build the environment, because being vulnerable is something that we see as a strength, and you know, that's something that we're going to keep leaning on. Our togetherness is extremely important, because that togetherness ultimately translates to everyone being together on the field and getting results. So thank you for that, Sam.
Thank you, Coach.
All right.
We're done there, Brian?
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, man.